Oftentimes, I find myself lying in bed, nice and tight and cozy in the covers, attempting to fall asleep at 2 a.m. after a late night Minecraft session with the boys, only to look at the clock, remember that I've got to wake up at 7:30 the following morning, and explain to my fellow peers the unfortunate position in life which I have now found myself in, which is what we in the business refer to as employment, and excuse myself to hit the shack, jump on the rack, and get my life back. Where did it all go wrong? But as I contemplate my entire life decisions in a daily semi-existential state of tranquility, I face the internal struggle of gaslighting my brain into falling asleep. Can you just please fall asleep? Please, I'm begging you. At the very least, I want to wake up not feeling like I want to die. Nah, fam, I don't really feel like it. You gotta pay for the premium subscription to get a good night's sleep. $30 a month. So, in my unfortunate ability to nod off, well complemented with the wretched state of complete isolation I find myself in, all of a sudden, I have a vision. My brain achieves a higher plane of blissful euphoria, ascending into the spiritual nirvana of pure intellect and philosophy. I hold all the secrets of the universe. I see the strings which hold our realm together, intertwined in perfect synchronization. Even if one was to slip out of balance ever so slightly, anything and everything would fade away into obscurity, forever lost in time. After all, time is just the fabric of the universe anyway. What's to say that time just completely unravels itself, thus initiating the inevitable cataclysmic end of our universe as we know it? Hey, you know what? That's a pretty good idea for a story, actually. What if there was some random guy who somehow gained some magical, spiritual enlightenment that time was unraveling before his very eyes? And what if he, attempted to start a whole religion and cult surrounding it? Oh, I can envision the story perfectly. A masterclass work of art, truly one of the stories of all time. Oh, such a great idea, right? Such an incredible, original idea that totally has never been done before in the history of creative writing. I sure hope I don't forget about it the following morning. If there's anything in which any creator of any field, industry, or media can unanimously agree on, it's that nothing, and I mean nothing, is more painstakingly difficult and frustrating than the hassle of trying to think an original idea. Period. I don't care if you're passionate about music or art or writing, heck, even Rule 34 for all I care. But if you have ever made any creative work in your entire life, whether it be by choice or obligation, it feels like such a straining headache to think of, the whole made idea of what the piece is even about in the first place. To any regular Joe Swanson watching this video, you might just be thinking, bro, just create whatever you're passionate about, can't be that hard. But that's where you're wrong, and allow me to deflect your whole argument with a simple thought experiment. Think back to literally any school project you've ever done throughout your entire academic journey, and recollect the stressful, nightmarish experience of brainstorming any concept of a plan whatsoever. And God forbid you're paired together with a bunch of other nimrods. Best believe you ain't be getting an A. Thinking of any iota of an original idea is so astronomically challenging, it seems impossible. But with a few key skills at your disposal and an optimistic, enduring mindset, creating any open-world story with infinite wonders and endless possibilities is, frankly, not as difficult as people make it out to be. Now, I'm not gonna say it ain't no easy work. I mean, it's not like you can draft a bestseller in under 3 minutes. But I will say that it is a fun and engaging process to properly structure and formulate an original story, a plot, a world setting, all thanks to the incredible creativity prowess that is your imagination.
Oh my God!
So allow me to offer 3 pieces of valuable insight, which I in fact use on the day-to-day basis to help improve my thought process and creative mindset, all while thinking about the big picture. And hey, hopefully this can help you out as well. Consider this an educational experience. Yeah, that's right, this is an educational channel now. First things first, you can't go about making anything you want without having just a little change in perspective. If you perceive the mindset of being extremely hypercritical and overly anal in terms of originality and always having to be the first to come up with an idea, then you're just gonna have to accept that perhaps this isn't gonna work out for you. Snap back to reality, little bro. You have to understand that most, if not everything, has already been done in one way or another, and you are not gonna be the one accepting to stand out. But that doesn't make a new up-and-coming story any less devoid and impactful. You could pick any two completely polar opposite pieces of art, regardless of media or genre, and still be able to find any little nitpick and similarity between the two of how they share certain details and elements. So, like, bro, if you seriously act like this whenever you watch any movie or film, critiquing its overall production value, all due to the fact that,
Oh, this is just like some other obscure movie.
just because two forms of media share similar plot structure and similar character arcs doesn't make it a direct copy. That's just how the passive consumption of art works whenever you engage in anything we either like or dislike. Sound familiar? Because guess what? This exact same spiel I just described to you just so happens to be this immersive concept which many talented and like-minded figures refer to as inspiration. With that being said, this brings me to my next piece of the puzzle. Inspiration. If you're anything like me, you probably love engaging in any new forms of art, literature, film, the whole shebang. Now, due to your superior intellect and reasonable taste and appreciation for talent, you probably already have a good idea on what you personally like about a story or setting. And hey, you should use this to your advantage. Truly take a moment to examine and investigate your favorite movies and TV shows and see what sticks out to you and what element you could possibly branch out in your own separate way. Gather as many inspired works as possible and embrace their creative style and format with a potential tale of your own telling. I would wager that a large majority of the most popular movies and TV shows of all time are either indirectly inspired by or loosely based off another separate entity and IP which the filmmakers and producers personally chose to remedy because they just plainly really like the source material. No piece of art is ever just brought up out of the aether. Every creation has a reasonable spark and catalyst as to what currently existing IP brought about such inspiration. There is nothing wrong with loosely borrowing another popular form of media to repurpose as a completely new product. As long as your story is distinct enough in its own personal tone, theming, and world building, it will do beyond wonders to help draft a basic blueprint for your magnum opus. Speaking of blueprints, now would be the perfect time to discuss possibly the most crucial element of writing your story. And that is, well, is actually writing it. Well, to specify in further detail, when I mean writing your story, I mean properly formatting and structuring your narrative scene by scene, character by character. Before you can even officially start with your project, you will need a plan of attack, a vision board, one might say. As the sole proprietor and voice of origin, you are single-handedly responsible for asking the who's, the how's, and the why's to every single possible question. Whether it be alluding to the plot structure, if it's cohesive or not, the characters and their respective relationships to one another, the surrounding details and setting to the world building of your narrative. There are so many moving parts in this, and for good reason. You don't want to just jump the gun with barely any thought given aside from the general premise and main protagonist, because I'll tell you what's going to happen. You're going to hit so many roadblocks and plot holes that you'll begin to find it an incredibly boring hassle and question why you're even doing this in the first place. You immediately lose interest, give up, scrap the idea, and then repeat the cycle over and over again. You need a structured blueprint in order for your story to flow in a cohesive and orderly fashion, all while maintaining a naturally progressing plot. You need direction, and drafting a blueprint is perfect for that. So here's what I would personally do and would recommend to any aspiring writers, scriptwriters, novelists, filmmakers, etc. To create a basic blueprint, you can either sketch a nice, pretty format like this on a few pieces of paper to help brainstorm the details and intricacies of your narrative, or if you prefer, you can draft it online via Google Slides. Okay, so once you've got your sketch template all ready to go, it's up to your personal decision on what feature and element of the story you wish to draft first. It does depend from story to story, but I personally like to start with the theme. Every single story has a revolving theme or motif or an inner message, with some being much more serious than others. For example, if you're going to be writing a classic hero's journey about, big hero stopping big villain, then your theming is going to be the good old-fashioned good v evil. Or if you're writing about a political and militaristic dystopian world ruled by a power class system, then your theming is going to revolve around the inner corruption of politics and government, similar to that of the current day. Or if you're writing an extremely profound and riveting tale of a woman struggling with abuse and depression, then your theming is probably going to be an inner contemplation on self-harm. You get the idea. Bottom line is, theming is what speaks to us as the audience on a personal level. Theming is typically a real problem which we face in the real world, and having a really impactful theme can transform your story into something far beyond just a simple piece of literature. And now, we come to the characters. What many authors and novelists regard as the most enjoyable section of the drafting process and experience, and for good reason. Characters are arguably the most crucial and significant element of your whole creation altogether. If you have boring characters, you're going to have a boring story. Simple as that. Be as descriptive and realistic as you can when further shaping your characters. What do they look like? What are their goals and motivations? What traits and characteristics define them as an individual? Talk about their backstories, their fears, their position and lifestyle in society. Be sure to conduct and formulate an in-depth analysis of everything there is to your main character, your side character, your foil, your villain. This is the bread and butter. Characterize your characters to the best of your ability. Now, although there are numerous other details and elements we can touch on, such as, world building, town name, setting, and time, we're just going to gloss over them because I don't want this video to get super long. Because now comes time to draft a blueprint for your plot structure. Chances are, if you paid attention in second grade, right now you're probably thinking of this specific graph and illustration. Pay no attention to this. You know what? Disregard it completely because it's too simplified and not explicit enough to fit our needs. Now this is what your plot structure should look like. A nice, neatly organized, detail-oriented diagram taking you scene by scene, chapter by chapter. This is how you get from point A to point B. Now, you don't have to make it super extremely complex and convoluted, but more than enough to get the ball rolling. More than enough to give you a clear and concise method to go about things so that you don't lose interest and direction when it finally comes time to start writing your story. To help give you guys an idea of how simple and straightforward this is to understand, allow me to demonstrate with an example of my own. You know what, as a matter of fact, let's brainstorm a basic premise for a novel together, and let's draft our blueprint using this same template. I'll walk you through the process step by step, and if you wish to follow along, I'll put a link in the description to this exact same template, and you can use it for any of your writing whatsoever. Above all, this isn't just limited to writing a book. You can use this to help write a screenplay, a movie script, a public speech. You can even use this for a Minecraft build if you wish to. In fact, I'd heavily encourage it. Anyways, enough dilly-dally, let's get into it. Okay, so for this demonstration, we're gonna have to come up with an original idea before we can do anything else, if that didn't sound obvious enough already. Now, right now I'm kind of drawing a blank, which is to be expected. So to look for inspiration and gather ideas, I think I'm gonna think of some movies and books that I personally really enjoy conceptually, and go from there as a point of reference.
6.5 hours later.
Okay, so after a lot of thought and consideration, my mind has been extremely fixed on one book in particular. It's very well known. I almost guarantee you have at the very least heard of it. It's none other than The Outsiders by S.E. Hilton. I recently just read it for the very first time and I absolutely loved it. I loved the characters, I loved all the local gangs and their regional conflict between one another. I loved it so much. But the main focus I can't seem to get out of my head was just this sense of community between all the boys despite their troubling background and their unsustainable situation, all while having no place to call home. One of the biggest strong suits I could give to a story of The Outsiders would be just the overall theme and message of brotherhood between all the boys and always sticking up for one another. So much so to the point that I kind of want to take it to the next level. Hear me out, alright? Picture this. What if we were to write a novel set in the modern day, in the present social and political climate of the United States, with a predominantly integral focus toward the overwhelmingly large community of the homelessness? Now, for background context, if you aren't from the United States, you should know that it's common knowledge that the current state and system of the homelessness crisis in America is extremely corrupt and very poorly maintained. And Unfortunately, I personally don't foresee it getting any better anytime soon. And due to this conundrum we've really found ourselves in, it's very likely that the homelessness crisis is just going to keep getting worse and worse and worse, and that's all going to come to a limit sooner or later. Now hear me out. What if there was an alternative future in which the entire homeless population just kept growing and growing and growing, so much so to the point in which they had to consider treason and tyranny? What if this got so out of hand that our main protagonist could successfully lead a full-on revolution to take the capital city and overthrow the government, thus reforming all of democracy as we know it? What if they choose to take liberty into their own hands and now live in a post-American anarchy in which the homelessness are the ones who take charge and establish authoritarian rule to all those who rejected them? Now, I know what probably all y'all are thinking. Fuel, that is perhaps the most ludicrous and unrealistic plot concept I've ever heard in my entire life. Yes, for what you see as complete lunacy, I see as potential. You know what? I actually really like this story. The more I think about it, the more I come to appreciate it. So much so, I think I'm going to use this basic idea for our plot structure and our vision board. And hey, if you also really like this idea, feel free to use it, as this is all just an example. But in the rare occasion that you do end up successfully publishing it and making a lot of money, I would interject that I feel at least entitled to 20% royalty and equity. Anyways, let's get to our vision board. Let's draft our story. So here is just a blank template that we're going to be working with here. You can find it in the description of this video as mentioned previously, and watch how we're going to turn a bizarre, loosely connected thought process into a rich, cohesive story that will potentially inspire this next generation of readers and beyond. As mentioned in my explanation earlier, I like to start with the theming first because it allows me to properly plan and articulate what the general message is or the main takeaway. What do I want to leave my readers with when reading my story? What do I want them to think when reading through page after page of exposition? Well, I'll tell you what, and unfortunately, our particular theme for this story isn't all sunshine and rainbows. For the theming of our plot concept is going to be the extremity of the wealth inequality crisis in a democratic republic. You know, the rich are getting richer and the poor are getting poorer, so much so to the point in which rich and shrewd billionaires are ruling the government, all while doing everything in their power to keep poor people dying in the streets. Sound familiar? Our story is also going to focus a lot on the pure, unadulterated struggles of the homelessness, the sense of community, and overall political corruption. And boom! Just from that description alone, I now have a whole array of possibilities in which I can take this story, all from a simple yet thought-provoking social commentary which currently plagues us as a people. From there, we're going to fill out a bunch of other information such as setting, time, background context. I want to give us as much room to work with here. I want our story to be as riveting and compelling as we can possibly make it. And I already have the basic idea for setting, because this is going to be a tight-knit community, shacks upon shacks of vagrant civilians living in the rough. Perhaps they join together with other rundown communities under a common goal and ideology. I think I'll even list that in the background context and plot synopsis section. Okay, I've got most of not all these other subsections filled out, so now we've already got a nice, clear vision for this story. And the more I fill out this template, the more excited I get when it comes to time to finally start writing my narrative. But now comes possibly the most important part of the whole shebang, the characters. Now for this demonstration, I'm only going to be focusing on our main protagonist, but if you wish to further continue filling out this plot structure and vision board, feel free to, as this story is totally free for anyone to use and interpret in whatever way they please. Okay, so I want our main protagonist to be a relatively young adult male or female, doesn't really matter. What does matter is that I kind of want them to be born into a wealthy family, but later ends up in the lower class due to unfortunate circumstances in his life, just so that he happens to have the perspective of both sides of the spectrum. I think I might actually list that in the backstory. Maybe he wishes to help his community in any means necessary, and he's the kind of person to rise up to leadership and establish peace and prosperity to his fellow brothers and sisters. And of course, their name. We can't forget their name. Names are always really tricky because I'm very, very picky when it comes to names. So I have to think, what would be a good name which would be fitting for someone living in a poor environment, while also be fitting for a potential role in leadership? Not really sure. Okay, I know I haven't poured much time into naming our protagonist, but to keep things short, I'm kind of growing a liking to the name Carlos. I think it fits him really well. Oh, one other thing when it comes to naming, be sure to Google it and look it up. See if it isn't already taken. But if it's from an extremely obscure form of media, you'll be fine, go ahead. But make sure it isn't already from some popular IP. This is just a personal preference. Now, if you explore more of the template, you'll find tons of other subsections to further expand the concept of your story, such as scene structure, chapter structure, extra notes, art concept. But overall, this should feel like the perfect way to come up with an original idea of your own making and really take it to the next level. I guarantee you'll never hit writer's block again. Now, although we tackled the main juicy stuff of coming up with an original idea, there is still so much more we could talk about. We've barely scratched the surface of this never-ending iceberg. So if any of y'all want me to hear more about this topic in particular, I might even make a follow-up video. A part 2, might I word. But in the meantime, I'd encourage you all to check it out for yourself, and hey, maybe write a story of your very own with this resource. Send it to me via email and I might read it and respond with some feedback. Now, I understand that as of right now, it seems extremely strenuous and arduous of a task to think of any little thing whatsoever that hasn't been done a million times over, but hopefully, I was able to provide you with some tips and tricks to think of the bigger picture. Anyway, thanks so much for watching this video. It's getting pretty late and I'm getting pretty tired. So I think I'm gonna hit the hay and go get a good night's sleep. This is Fuel, and stay lit, fam.